it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Why? Because there was none. Now, in the original text, someone said that definite article, the, is not there. So then it would just simply read, in beginning, God created. Are y'all with me? In beginning, God created. They said that the definite article, the, tends to date a time. Before there ever was a beginning, there was God. In fact, when you look at it, God is the one who began the beginning. God is eternal. So with God, time is not a factor. God precedes time. God transcends time. Man is born in time. God gives time to man as a gift. So therefore, man ought not waste time. In fact, Paul said we need to be redeeming the time. Why? Because man is running out of time. Are y'all with me? Just two words. But God. Are y'all with me? When you look at that word, but, now I'm not claiming to be an English major. But as one person said, I do know that certain words, when placed in a sentence, they can have a tremendous impact on what's being said. When you look at the word but, that word but, someone said, is always of contrary opinion. That word but adds additional information. Are y'all with me? When you look at the word but, someone says that it is a conjunction that makes a difference. Stay with me now. I'll be where you want me after a while. When you look at the word but, that word but changes. It alters. Is everybody with me? That word but completely negates. It voids. It will cancel out. It will contradict. Are y'all with me? It will reverse what the writer previously stated. Are y'all with me? Let me give you an example. Let's just say that Brother Jack came up with a great idea. And I say, Brother Jack, that's a great idea. But, do y'all see where it's going? Chances are that what I'm about to say next is going to contradict or is going to completely reverse or abandon that thought altogether. Are y'all with me? Brother Jack, that was a great idea, but I think this is a better one. Is that making sense to everybody? We're just talking about but God now. Two words that changed, it changed everything. And those two words can change anything and everything in your life. And that's what we're going to look at on today. What if I say this is a good man? Or that's a good woman? But, now what do I mean when I say that? What I'm saying is that literally means that I'm sort of hesitant or reluctant to place all of my confidence in them. That's a good man. That's a good woman. But, can everybody see how that word but will completely change what was previously stated? Brother Jeter is a good friend. I think everybody's catching on to what I say when I say but, right? Because it's going to contradict. And so when you look at our text today, The writer lets us know. Go up to verse number 1. Go up to verse number 1. The writers let you and I know something about where we used to be at one point in time. He says, once you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins. Now, if you look at the King James Version, it says, and you hath he quickened. In most translations, that word is italicized. It's in italics, which means that more than likely it was not part of the original text. So it would just literally read, you were dead in trespasses and sin. In other words, at one point in time, you and I were like zombies. Y'all know what zombies are, right? They walk around in this corpse-like stupor or trance or coma. At one point in time, that's how we were. We were alive physically, but because we were insensitive to the things of God, we were spiritually dead. You and I were separated from God. We were cut off from God. In other words, as far as God is concerned, at one point in time, you and I were dead to him. You and I could not talk to God, didn't have a relationship with God. So notice at one point in time, you and I could not escape what? The bondage of Satan. At one point in time, you and I could not rise to life in God. Watch what he says. Go to the next verse. Go to the next verse. Next verse, watch what he says. You used to live in sin just like the rest of the world. Watch this. Where in times past, you walked. It's like we wandered around. An individual who wanders around with no direction, no purpose, no goal. Notice what he said. It's according to the course of the world, where you literally get the word wind. So in one sense, you and I were just simply going wherever the wind blows, whatever direction it goes in. Now, who was the source behind that wind? Look at verse number 3. Look at the next verse. Look at the source behind it. Look who was doing the blowing. Among whom also we had our conversation in times past in the lust of the flesh. Go up to the next verse. Go up to the next verse. Watch this. But next he says, but God. Do you see that? How it completely contradicts. It changes. It adds additional information. But God, who is rich in mercy. Thank God for his mercy. I believe it was Jeremiah who said that it is only because of the mercy of God that you and I have not been destroyed, that you and I have not been left to our own devices. But God can change anything and everything in your life. God had so much compassion upon the world that God loved you and I so much. Matter of fact, go to Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5, where we're going to get our first point. You may be in sin this morning. You may be a sinner. You may be outside of Christ, but God still loves you. That's point number 1. You may be a sinner this morning. You may be outside of Christ, but you need to know that God still loves you. Watch here as Paul talks about the compassion of God. First here, watch what he does. First here, he talks about the crucifixion of Christ. Paul is going to deal with primarily here, he's going to deal with the time. When did he do it? He noticed what he says. He says, for when you and I were yet, y'all see that? When we were yet without strength, the powerlessness of man. We were without power. At one point in time, we were without strength. When you and I were too helpless, when we were hopeless, when you and I were too weak. Watch this. For when we were yet without strength, we were too weak. That word weakness there actually involves you and I not having the ability to actually live a holy life. Because of sin, man did not have the strength to actually live a morally upright life before God. We were constantly falling short of God's standard of perfection. So because of this, watch this. So when you and I were without strength, watch this. Not only that, but then look at the plan of God. He says, in due time. You need to thank God for the due time. In due time, what do you mean? It literally means at the opportune time. It was in time, on time, it was at the right time. As one songwriter says, he may not come when you want it, but he'll be there right on time. It was at that time when God knew that you and I would need it the most. It was at that time, watch this, when Christ died. And Christ died is actually emphasized. It is expressed forcefully and powerfully. It was Christ who died, not Chris, for the ungodly. It was not Buddha. It was not Confucius. It was not Muhammad. It was not Hare Krishna. It was not the Pope, but it was Christ. Watch what he did, who died for the ungodly. Did you not know that Christ died for those who didn't even deserve it? And I want you to know that if you're here and you're without Christ this morning, I want you to understand, but God still loves you. That word but can change anything and changes everything in your life. Are y'all seeing this? So when you and I were out there, Christ died for the ungodly. But watch this. Go to the next verse. Go to the next verse. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die. Yet peradventure, or perhaps for a good man, some would even dare to die. I like what one preacher said. He said that whenever he reads this verse, he's always so overwhelmed and amazed by the love that God had for us. Because all of us in here would show appreciation to an individual that's good, that's kind, that's considerate, one that may be courteous, or one who may be exceptional. Some of us in here would even go out of our way to stand up for them and defend them. But how many of you would actually go out of your way for your enemy? How many of you would go to bat for someone who's cursed you to your face? How many of you would stand up for someone who's trying to stab you in the back, that's trying to ruin your life, that's trying to ruin your reputation? Are y'all seeing this? So perhaps a few people, watch this, some would die for a good person, for somebody that's especially good. But God went another way.